It's time for today's Faceoff on Fox Soul. Challengers Quan LX and Big Angry Adams, ready to go blow by blow on those hot topics. Faceoff on Fox Soul starts right now.
Before we get started with our regular show tonight, we wanted to take a moment to tell the Fox Faceoff faithful how we feel and express our condolences about the tragedy that happened right here in our home state of Texas, in the Hill Country, the awful flooding. We offer our condolences to the families that have lost so much, and it's just been a horrible, horrible thing for the state. We've also watched a number of awful people politicize this tragedy. We both feel that is deeply inappropriate, and we are going to hold off on discussing any of those elements on this very political show until there has been a completed recovery effort and we have allowed those Houston families and those Texas families time to grieve. We are truly heartbroken. And now we're going to get back into our regular programming.
That's a 24/7 operation. There are agents working from that particular site. They engaged the suspect that had opened fire upon that building and upon those agents that were in the building. Our officer responding to this particular scene, we have one officer by the name of Ismael Garcia, a 10-year veteran with us, as well responded to the call for service. And he was struck by a round. We don't know exactly whether that's a piece of a round, a full round. We don't know. He got hit in the knee. He is going to be fine. He's going through a recovery process and treatment at this point in time at a local hospital.
In this round, here's Charles Big Angry Adams.
In another alarming incident right here in Texas, we have a facility in McAllen, Texas, and for the viewers on the national level that are not familiar, that is a city that is a sister city of Brownsville and is right there directly on the Texas-Mexico border in South Texas. But an ICE immigration facility was attacked by an armed militant that it appears to be downstream from this tremendous amount of horrifying rhetoric that we have seen about the enforcement of immigration policies by the Trump administration. We have some Democrat politicians in an interview. Matt, I don't know if we have a screen grab of the Axios article that was recently published, where they are interviewing Democrat politicians who are saying things like, our own base is this is a quote, our own base is telling us that what we're doing is not good enough, that there needs to be blood to grab the attention of the press and the public. Another House Democrat, these are Congress people. Civility isn't working. Prepare for violence to fight to protect our democracy. People on another one, a fifth one, people online have sent me crazy S-word, told me to storm the White House and stuff like that. There's always people on the internet saying crazy stuff. I think the fifth one is the only one that sounds the most reasonable of these quotes, which are very alarming, where they are acknowledging that there are crazy people that have been given a platform to say and encourage whatever they want. And there are other crazy people listening, right, and doing, as we've seen here in McAllen. You heard the press conference. There was one of the public officials, one of the law enforcement officers, was struck in the knee. It is only by God's grace that we didn't see people killed other than the attacker. But there are a great many Americans, a growing number of Americans, that think that it is absolutely justified to use violence directed at their ideological opponents, who don't see people that disagree with them on politics as human beings, right? We have seen this growing and a growing ideological rift that some would like to tie to a racial rift, which I disagree with. And it only seems to be getting worse. I think there are people that are concerned that Trump's immigration efforts are going far beyond what was promised during the campaign, which was we are going to go after these criminals that either were criminals before they came illegally into this country or people that came both illegally and legally into this country and then committed crimes. And that was going to be the deportation goal. We're seeing a much broader effort that doesn't resonate as is not as popular with the American public as the effort to remove the criminals that have come to this country. But we're seeing a lot of calls for violence, and I disagree with it. I think politics should be handled at the ballot box, and that is the only place. But America is facing some troubled times.
Charles, but you speak as though you're surprised. For 2 years, I've told you on this show that America is so divided politically and that extremism is now taking over both sides of the spectrum. It's not just Democrats who are being the extremists, it's Republicans who are just extreme on the opposite side of the aisle. And both bases are now so riled up and so suspicious of its own government and distrusting of its own government. The recipe is there for a conflict to take place between Americans that produces a new civil war in this nation. When you look at now politicians speaking like this, calling for violence, when politicians saying their base is telling them that civility does not work, these are not Antifa members speaking. These are not activists out on street corners or at podiums or bullhorns speaking. These are elected officials of the United States government saying that being civil doesn't work anymore. Now you have some, like this man who decided to shoot up this immigration facility. Man, look, that ain't nothing new. They've been shooting up baseball games where politicians are playing just a softball game because they disagree with them politically. This is nothing new. America is headed toward total disruption. You have millions in this country, like we saw in the protest several weeks back, 5 million people take to the streets saying no kings in reference to Donald Trump being a modern day king in this country, mindset wise. Then we just recently saw, I don't know if we have that picture or the video, where Donald Trump was being interviewed by a Fox reporter, and he had a black curtain up on the wall. And he told her, I normally don't show people this. He pulled the curtain back, and there was a hat that said Trump 2028. Charles, I've said it before on this show. I do not believe that Donald Trump is going to leave office when his term is up. He's already said there's ways he could run and seek a third term. He's already said it. Now he's showing hats saying Trump 2028. I believe that he's not going to just leave office when his term is up. But what hurts me about the Latino community, every time they're now showing Latino officers being the ones who are grabbing immigrants, who are grabbing and capturing these Hispanic immigrants, Latino immigrants whose status is not acceptable or legal in this country to deport them. Why, I'm asking you, are Latino men and women in uniform being the focus of those who are capturing other Latino men and women? They're playing a game. And these men and women are acting like modern day slave catchers. And I'm telling you, America, if we continue on the course that we're on, when we have a sitting president saying we don't have to respect federal judges, they're renegade judges. He even said the Supreme Court was a runaway court, that they were activist rogue judges. When you have the commander-in-chief of a nation talking like that, whose bases on both sides already hate each other and totally distrust his government, we are on the recipe of a civil war in this country.
Well, I mean, I know that you've been advocating it because I think you monetize it for quite some time.
Not advocating.
You've just been. Don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt me. I'm tired of you constantly interrupting me.
But I'm tired of you lying.
5 minutes. You just spent 5 minutes.
But I'm tired of you lying
on about why there should be violence. Softly advocating for violence with your tired tirade of dishonesty. Right? Oh, Donald Trump's going to run again. He's not going to step down. Oh, Laura Ingraham. Blah, 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 blah. It's just you saying, well, they're doing it, but maybe it's justified and necessary. No, it's not necessary. And the fact is, when you say most Americans hate, no, most Americans, whether the Republicans or Democrats, are exhausted by all this, right? They're exhausted by the nonsense. They're exhausted by the politicization of everything, right? The turning of every tragedy, the turning of every event into some political narrative. And you began as if I was pretending that it was just the Democrats. I absolutely not. If you'll remember on January 6th, when they had a gallows with a hangman's noose set up and were hanging an effigy of the former vice president, right? There's no party that has a monopoly on it, but it is just the isolated extreme voices that for some reason America is kowtowing to and listening too much, right? Whether they're listening to them too much online or listening too much of them on television like this. You talk about the Hispanic, the Latino people that work for the Border Patrol. We're talking about public servants. We're talking about people that took an oath. There's not some decision to make more CBP people be Latino and show up. In fact, if you look at the rank and file of the Border Patrol, right, which is largely along the Mexico border, because that's where people are entering this country constantly unlawfully, right? A lot of them are Latino, but they, unlike you, they don't see themselves as a person of color or brown. They see themselves as a public servant doing their job. And whether I agree or disagree, because I do think America is largely to blame, right, for a lot of the immigration. I do think in the last 4 years, it was greatly exacerbated by design downstream from the Obama administration, trying to basically change the voter demographic of this country, right? But I do think that.
But when I said that, you said I was wrong. I told you
no,
that,
I didn't.
And you said I was wrong, that they wanted to use those immigrants to become new voters to replace black voters who were waking up and distrusting the Democratic Party.
Well, I don't think they were trying to place black voters, because I think they believe that the Democrats believe that they're going to control the overwhelming majority of the black vote forever, despite their widespread abandonment of them.
This last election just proved that's not true. This last election just proved that the Democratic platform is now breaking and collapsing among so many young African Americans that they're not voting Democrats anymore. They're either not voting, not going to the polls, and some of them have crossed over. Charles, America, man, is on the brink of total chaos because our politicians now look like they cannot work together on anything. And politicians on both sides of the aisle are using language that you hear in the streets, that you hear on platforms that you say are fringe platforms. These are not fringe men and women talking like this. These are elected officials on both sides of the aisle. We cannot water this thing down. If America does not change direction, we're heading toward another civil war. Do I want to see it? Hell no, because our own people will be harming one another. But I'm telling you, that's where we are headed. These are Antifa members talking like this. These are members of Congress. These are members of the U.S. Senate talking like this.
So if you're not advocating for it, which I just believe I remember you advocating for it years ago.
Never happened.
If you're not advocating for it, right? Then why are you always sowing the seeds of racialized division, right? Because I personally believe that this is all a control mechanism, right? If we stay angry, right, and phantoms, right? If we believe this myth that all white people are cursed because their ancestors are colonizers and slavers, which of course is absolutely not true. And when you look at the history of colonization and the history of slavery and where slavery and colonization is going on right now in the world, it's not white people at all, right? And we shouldn't look at people through the lens of race, but you have been preaching to look at people through the lens of race for decades,
that's not
right?
true. And your nose is growing every time you open your mouth. Your nose is getting longer. Charles, let me tell you something, man. When you look at where slavery exists today, in particular like Libya, Slavery only exists in Libya because of what Hillary Clinton did, an illegal act, an unjust act. But before Hillary Clinton supported and helped the CIA to have Muammar Gaddafi captured and assassinated, there was no slavery in Europe. There was barely any crime over there in Libya. But Europe had its wish fulfilled by Hillary Clinton doing something she never should have did. So, Charles,
are you actually arguing that Hillary Clinton created slavery in Libya?
No, I'm saying Hillary Clinton
let's go
removed
to
Gaddafi, and then slavery came right behind
How did the pyramids get built in your
Charles,
mind's eye?
how did what?
How did the pyramids get built?
Black people built those pyramids.
No, it was the enslavement
In
of
Mother
Jewish
Africa,
people,
black people
right?
built the pyramids in Egypt.
No, it was
the ancient name of Egypt is called Kemet, and Kemet is defined as land of the dark-faced people. Then we're not Europeans building pyramids in
we
Egypt.
can disagree on who was enslaved to build
now
them.
you're going
But
crazy as hell. Trying to tell me that some
built
European folks that look like Charles Manson
we
built the
agree
pyramids in
that
Egypt.
slaves
You ought to
built the
stop.
pyramids? Can we agree that slaves built the pyramids?
Oh, absolutely. And they were black slaves. They were Hebrew Israelite slaves.
In Korea, the longest chain of unbroken slavery is 1,500 years. It was in Korea, right?
We talking about America. We ain't talking about Korea.
We
talking about America.
Talking about Whitey. You were talking about Libya.
We talking about America.
Engaging in this kind of weird Alex Jonesy make-believe that you like to engage in.
The only thing that's going to change America right now, and I agree with Elon Musk, nation and the discourse in this nation and bring balance is a third political party. And I have to agree with Elon Musk, and I don't agree with him a lot, but a third political party would bring a balancing act to the extremism on both sides.
Yeah, I disagree. I think we just need to get both parties in order.
Hour, Chopper 6 captured officials walking people inside of the detention center in the Everglades. Many call Alligator Alcatraz. These are just some of the first images we're seeing of activity in newly built facility.
This comes as officials say the first group of immigrants are...
In this round, here's Quanell X.
That was a news story talking about a detention facility in Florida that just a week ago, President Trump actually toured the facility, and he was there with Governor DeSantis, and they were he in particular was bragging about if the illegal immigrants try to escape, that the alligators would be trained of how to capture the immigrants when they attempt to leave or escape the facility, how the alligators would know how to swim to capture an immigrant. I say to President Trump, you dirty, no good, low down. If you did a simple search, Mr. Trump, you will know that the state of Florida has a terrible history of using black women and black babies as alligator bait in the state of Florida. Simple Google search. That slave masters, to punish a black father or mother, they would take one of them who was getting out of line and take their babies and invite other slave masters to an alligator hunt, and they would use black babies as the bait. They would take a mother and they would slice the mother's leg and hang her in the air over the damn swamp and let the blood drain down to pull the alligators in, and they would use her baby as bait, and the damn alligators would eat the bait. And now you as the president gonna sit there and brag about using alligators to catch people who are escaping detention, people of color. Shame on you, Mr. Trump. And that's a damn disgrace.
I would agree that they were disgraceful comments. I'm still continuing to be shocked at your 180-degree about face on Donald Trump when you were so supportive of him just a few months ago. His rhetoric has not changed. He has a penchant for saying absolutely wild things, both on a variety of social media platforms and to the public eye, that ingratiates him to his the fringe of his populist base. And I think it's horrible. And I think if you look at this Alligator Alcatraz facility, it is built on an abandoned airstrip in Dade County. It is surrounded by swamp that has been infested with pythons that have been imported, and has been a problem for about 30 years in Florida. And of course, alligators. but more importantly, the most deadly beast on the planet that kills far more people than any other type of being is the mosquito, and it is infested there. And there are conditions, and we have already seen some lawsuits that were filed by environmental agencies and our environmental nonprofits that are seeking to stop the use of this facility based on environmental concerns. You've had some Democrat Congress people that have tried to visit and been denied. It actually opened for business the day before the 4th of July last week on July 3rd. So you have a lot of alarming concerns. But again, this is downstream from the Biden administration's laissez faire efforts at the border that began prior to his inauguration, where he made some confusing statements, and he did make a whole lot of confusing statements that suggested that he was not going to be deporting anyone at the beginning of his term, which led to an incredible rush. We were looking at times 2 million illegal entrants a month. And that was just an estimate that some people saw as low, that has been all but ended by the Trump administration. And we have a situation here where our government is taking effort to stop the incredible problem with mass migration. But yeah, there's no doubt that the messaging and in the facility itself, unless we're just putting criminals, just putting people that were in these evil gangs in Central and South America that then snuck into this country with the help of the cartel, or the awful that came here and committed felonies, committed robberies, committed rapes, committed murders, because those people I don't care about. Let them sweat. If they try to escape, let a python eat them. But we're mainly talking about hardworking immigrants that just came to this country to grasp at the brass ring of Americanism. And I think they absolutely should be treated differently.
That's it for the Face-Off on Fox Soul. We'll catch you next time.